Welcome to a Cannopy interview. I am Michael Zerithus Cook, the chief editor of Cannopy, and you're listening today to a conversation with John Storgårds, who has just been appointed the music director of the National Arts Center Orchestra. Now, this is an orchestra that we've written about and covered extensively over the last year, partly because I was on tour with them in June of 2025 when they were on tour to South Korea and Japan. I got the opportunity to see the orchestra both up close, but also sort of out of their element. You know, when you're traveling and you're on the road, that takes you out of your comfort zone and it sort of shows you, your strengths as well as your weaknesses. But with the orchestra on tour, I saw nothing but strengths. And when I had a chance, when we arrived later in the fall last year, I went to Ottawa and saw the orchestra in their own hall. And it was more of that sort of state of the art musicianship that I saw on the road. And it was beautiful. And it was beautiful to see it in Southam Hall in Ottawa, which is just right across from Parliament Hill. If you've never been to the National Arts Center, I would highly recommend it. It's just a train rides away from wherever you're listening to this. So I didn't know much about John Storgårds as a conductor, aside from chance appearances here in Toronto with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. So I needed an introduction, and I figured you probably also need an introduction if you're not super familiar with him. So that's what this conversation is. And after speaking with him, it's very clear, number one, that he cares deeply, deeply about the music that he's making with other people. And he has this sort of uniquely extroverted approach to presenting music, which, first of all, I think every orchestra in 2026 should put a premium on in terms of having a spokesperson that's really comfortable talking to the public and advocating for the work and the role of the orchestra in the community. And then on top of that, he has quite a significant international reputation as well. We talk about some of the places that he has been the chief conductor and will continue to conduct for, and it's quite an impressive list. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope you learned not only about John Storgårds and who he is as a person, but what the National Arts Center Orchestra stands for, what they're doing with their upcoming season, which will actually be a really interesting one. And for a quick run through of what this upcoming season looks like, please check out the piece written by one of our writers, Stefania Romanuk. Stefania, if I butchered your name, my apologies. But she's written this beautifully conceived overview of the National Arts Center Orchestra's 26-27 season. But she sort of wrote it from a first-person perspective. She's a musician herself and really a talented writer, so she kind of sits in both of those worlds, and she focuses on the Canadian content that is being performed by the National Arts Center Orchestra in the upcoming year. And there's a specific Canadian composer that I'm almost sure you've never heard of if you're not sort of steeped into this world, because I'd never heard of her either. But for Stefania and the National Arts Center Orchestra, this is a name that has been important for them for a very long time. So they're sort of putting a huge spotlight on her work as a Canadian composer. So please read the piece below, and it also includes all the links to the different concerts and highlights throughout the upcoming season, the tickets to which are again now on sale. There's a link in the piece below that'll take you to the National Arts Center Orchestra's website. And by buying tickets and supporting the work that this orchestra is doing, you're also supporting what we're doing. I sincerely believe that they are the best orchestra in Canada. And again, you have access to that level and quality of music with one single train ride or drive down the highway for just a couple of hours. So if you're looking for a reason to get out of Toronto or to get out of, whichever city that you're listening to this from and visit the capital, or if you're in Ottawa and you've never been to the National Arts Center, this is your invitation, and it's coming from their new music director, John Storgårds. John Storgårds, thank you again for joining Cannopy. And as I was just saying, congratulations on being appointed music director of Canada's National Arts Center Orchestra.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I want to start by talking about just getting the job. And this idea of the NACO hiring from within and also from without. From within, you guys have made two big hires over the last year. So the first one is Annabelle Cloutier, who is now the CEO of the NAC. And she has been with the organization for a very long time. So, I'm happy to see more and more arts organizations in Canada looking internally to hire, right? Instead of, finding someone from
Yeah.
to bring on board. And then the second big hire is you in this position. Although you're probably not joining me from Canada, you're probably somewhere, across the sea. You have been.
I'm in Minneapolis at the moment.
The idea is that, you are also from within the company, right? You've been
Yeah.
the NACO since 2013. So it is a bit of an internal hire. How much do you think that familiarity with the NACO and with that organization played a part in you being selected for this role?
Well, I think it's a big part of the whole thing. And looking at the music field all by all international at the moment, you see so many things going on with hiring people on with after one or two visits, and young and not so experienced people who might be, of course, fantastically talented and whatever, but there is always a certain risk with in a quite a big way actually with that kind of hirings. And I see it as a positive thing that there are exceptions from this. What this is also all about, that it's really about the orchestra and myself knowing each other very well since a long time, and we really know in what way we work together, and in what way we enjoy working together, and in what way we believe in each other, and the achievements we can get. And it's really about deepening the relation, which is already there. And I'm kind of used to these kind of things from before also, because I was also in when I was chief conductor in Helsinki a long time ago, Helsinki Philharmonic. Before that, I was principal guest with Helsinki Phil. And when I became chief conductor of BBC Philharmonic in UK, I was also principal guest and then chief guest before that. So maybe that's something that that has been typical in my role as a musician, that relations are not built on sudden choices of this or that. It's more built on really a long relationship and something that has been built up with time.
In that sense, you are an internal hire, but in also another sense, you're an external hire. You're coming from without, from the outside, right? I think you're obviously you're originally from Finland, but you're a conductor in Finland and elsewhere around the world. So despite the many benefits of an external perspective, how do you intend on making up for what there must be certain deficits when you're not part of the local scene? Maybe you didn't grow up in Canada or whatever the case might be. How do you make up for the fact that you are coming from the outside in?
It's a interesting question, because in a way, after all this year doing so much in Canada, also I've been many times also guesting Toronto and Montreal and then of course Ottawa more than anything. But I got to feel that that Canada is very much part of my life as a musician anyway. Of course, I am from Finland and I still live in Finland. My family life is in Finland, but I've been traveling for ages as a musician, and where I feel at home is where I really feel that this is a place where I feel a connection with the musicians and the environment and the atmosphere and everything. And there is so much in common also between Canada and Finland in this sense, even the climate. I've always used to say that when I travel the whole day from Finland, whatever routes, from if I come from Lapland, where I'm family based, I travel all day, and then finally I land in Ottawa, and I look out from the window of the airport and I say, well, I'm back from where I started, because the climate is the same, and winter is hard in the same way. The deep season differences are great and clear in the same way. This also means actually a lot to me, and in that sense, I don't feel so much as an outsider that what you might think.
And this brings me to our next question, which is the next year, 2026, 27 is going to be, it's a pretty big year for Finnish conductors. As you probably know, Klaus Smakila will be joining the Chicago Symphony Orchestra as their new music director. Esa-Pekka Salonen, another Finnish conductor, has been appointed principal conductor at Paris Orchestra. And of course, you're coming to Ottawa. What is it about the musical environment in Finland that pumps out conductors that are in such high demand? Like, is there something about your country that makes it kind of like in fashion currently?
I think it has to do with many different things. Maybe one thing is that we are not too many people in Finland. I mean, there's always space for innovation, and there's space for collaboration, and in whatever field you are, there is connection between people because you just know each other, and over the borders of generations and whatever, you know each other and you encourage each other. And then of course, what comes specifically to Finland, you cannot be without naming Jean Sibelius, because he was such a huge figure for the whole country. In not only musically, of course, he's one of the great composers musically, but also for that time when he was around, it was so much part of Finland becoming finally independent, and Sibelius was such a big thing, and a big part of this whole building up of the self-confident feeling of being a great independent nation. And since those times, the music field has been taken seriously and has been kept taken seriously in Finland. And I think that has helped also the situation that, as you say, is pretty obvious, that there is so many Finnish musicians around. And I think that's one reason. But there are still many more reasons. One is also that because we are not so many people, and because the country has space, it also means, and because the music field has been supported, it also means that there are orchestras all over Finland. Most of them are smaller, not big symphony orchestras, but still professional orchestras, or at least semi-professional orchestras in every little city all over Finland almost. So if you are a young musician and a young conductor especially, what you really need is to get the chances to conduct orchestras. And in Finland, you really get that chance at an early stage, because there are so many orchestras around who are looking at, okay, what's happening now at the conductors class in Helsinki? And there are young new talents, and let's give them a chance. And even before you are out of the school system in the conducting field, you get a lot of chances to conduct orchestras, professional orchestras all over. And I'm sure that that's a huge reason for why there are so many conductors around from Finland.
It's pretty incredible and unique to be able to trace a contemporary musical landscape back to a composer, the way that Finland is able to do with Jean Sibelius. I think he's that much of a towering figure. And I think he also wrote your national anthem, if I recall correctly.
Well, kind of, yeah. We have it's the unofficial Finnish national anthem, the Finlandia. But yes, it is definitely a piece. Every Finnish person has some relation to that piece, and it means something. And it is an important piece. Not only the hymn in it, the main theme in it, but the whole thing. It's not such a long, big composition anyway. People really know the whole composition in Finland. Yeah,
and we'll get back to Ottawa in a second, but I think the theme song from Game of Thrones. There's a very prominent theory that theme song is actually taken from the violin concerto by Sibelius. But I won't force you to comment on that, but I just want to show.
I don't know. I haven't looked at this. I'm sorry. I'm out of this. I don't know.
No, it's fine. I won't force you to contribute to the controversy. But we're back here in Ottawa. What do you appreciate the most? So the person whose job that you're taking on, or who you're replacing, is obviously Alexander Shelley, who has been, just an instrumental figure in Canadian music over the last, I guess 15 years now. I'll have to double check that. But what do you appreciate the most about what he has done in this role? And frankly, what would you like to do differently?
During Alexander's time, I think a great thing is that he has widened up the repertoire a lot. I mean, of course, there is still also the legacy of Zuckerman in this orchestra, and this is a kind of fantastic, strong string sound body in within the orchestra, which is still there from Zuckerman's times. And that's also one thing that I have enjoyed always there. And maybe also because I'm a violin player myself. But then Alexander came and he widened the repertoire. And during his time, there has been a lot of commissions, I think, really a lot, mostly Canadian composers, but also other things. And also he had during his time, a lot of different kind of thematic projects have been done. And he also created more ideas around the education and the mentorship side, which also always has been important for NAC orchestra. And he widened also the innovative ways of collaborating with, for example, dance or a film or multimedia, and of course the COVID also had a role there, because that made any orchestra anyway were to be extra innovative with how to use technique more than before. But he has been involved in all this, I think, in a great way. And also during his time, a lot of tours were made. So of course, to continue what you asked, I will do my best to build on this and to keep this great development that has been done with Alexander during his time. And of course, I have my taste for certain kinds of directions in the music field of what to do, maybe of such repertoire that even he hasn't done so much, that I might be interested to do. And also, I'm expected, I think, also to bring to the orchestra composers and music and different kinds of ideas that, of course, haven't been done before. And also, they know me as a musician, as we already spoke well. So they have the right to expect also this from me, that I continue bringing in things that the orchestra might like, but they don't know from before, because this I have been doing already as a guest conductor anyway. And also not only for the orchestra, but for the audiences too, of course.
There's no better way to get a sense of some of the things that you talk about here in terms of what you want to do and, the things that you want to perpetuate going forward than by looking at your first season, your upcoming inaugural season as music director 26-27. And there are sort of three touchstones that I want to go over quickly. So, your focus on Canadian composers is number one. Canadian soloists, it seems to be another strong touchstone. And then lastly is international soloists. We'll get to that in a second. But beginning with Canadian composers, you seem to be obsessed with someone called Jean Coulthard. Now, who I've never heard of her. She's a Canadian composer. And there are several spotlights on Coulthard's work through performances. And you actually have a recording project coming up. Especially with the Symphony No. 1, which I don't think has ever been recorded in Canadian history. So who was Jean Coulthard, and how did you discover her music, and what resonated with you?
To be honest, I didn't know anything about her like 1 year ago. So I was introduced by my friends within the organization that, John, you have to look at this composer. There is this composer. And I asked them, okay, who was this? And well, it's a typical situation of being a female composer during a time where that did affect your chances to get really out there and published and taken enough seriously. And there were some performances, yes, but especially with the material and publishing and recording of her stuff, there's so much that has not been done. Of course, the first thing for me to do was to look at some scores. And I've been delighted to see the quality and also the range of style in her music. I mean, she had different periods. She was at some point she was more conservative, and then she was much more experimental at another time. So there is a lot of different kind of Coulthard music to find, and I see quality in all of this. And but as I said, the materials have not been on a high level disposable. So or there to get. So there's a lot to do with this project. And of course, I have a lot of people now helping me with this, but I'm absolutely convinced that this is a project worth doing, and that she is an important Canadian composer that hasn't have the focus that she deserves. So this, I think, we agreed with Daphne and with everybody within the organization that this could be a good, strong Canadian composer thing for me to start with. And yes, this is very exciting.
So aside from Canadian composers, you're also highlighting a couple Canadian soloists. Most notably pianist Angela Hewitt, and pianist Elizabeth Pion, who I'm not too familiar with. I can't say she's up and coming because she's actually has quite an international stature outside of Canada. But I wanted to ask you this. So we interviewed a Canadian soloist, a French pianist a Canadian pianist living in Paris recently, and she spoke very freely about how Canadian audiences are perceived by soloists on the international level. And she basically said that international soloists see us as too conservative and our programming is too boring. So a lot of people don't want to come here. Look, I know you disagree with that, but it's an opinion that exists. So I guess what I want to ask you is, what can Canadians do? What can Canadian audiences and programmers do to make us more attractive to international talent? And what is it that international talent gets wrong about Canada and gets wrong about Canadian music and Canadian programming?
Right. First of all, if you are soloist and when you become soloist, everything is based on your skills and your ability as a musician with the mainstream repertoire. You have to have that body in whatever you do. Then, of course, at a later stage, when you get more experienced and mature, then you can develop this into different directions. And for me, as a conductor and also a musician and violinist myself, maybe what I can do in this field is to be involved with. I know a lot of people. I've also, for example, Angela Yu, I met her, but this will actually be the first time we work together. But I worked with, for example, James Ennis. He played with me at the proms, and with Marc-André Amelin, who also comes. I've worked many times. Yeah, well, one also partly Canadian person who I'm working with this week here in Minneapolis is Lila Josefovich, and also she was in Ottawa, and I'm sure we will find new things also to do together. But she's a good example of an artist who also had all this base in a kind of a conservative way from the beginning, but then at some point she found herself that more in the way of that she wants to get out of this, and she wants to not be asked to do this and that because everybody does that. She wants to really do other things and to find new things, and this is an individual thing for any soloist, and especially if I have the chance now more and more also to get to know younger generation Canadian artists. Maybe I can have some kind of impact there also to get them to know pieces and composers and repertoire that they don't know from before. And Yeah, I don't know if this is a direct answer to your question, but
Yeah, well, it's definitely not a direct answer. I think you've chosen a very diplomatic answer, which I appreciate. If I was in your shoe, I'd be diplomatic as well. But what it sounds like you're saying is that it's not Canada that makes some of our soloists conservative. Is that soloists tend to be conservative in terms of what they perform when they're starting.
yeah.
And then as they get along in their career, they become more experimental. It just seems as if, soloists coming out of Europe and elsewhere, America even, they reach that point of experimentation and
More easily.
sooner, at least.
Yeah.
All right. Another thing that
Yeah, well, interesting. I didn't think so much about this really. But now when you say it, I promise I will take a look at this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I like that approach of like when you are interacting with young soloists, pushing them to be more experimental early on, pushing them to try on new works and so on. But we're coming to an end here. But I just have a few questions. So one of the things I can't help but notice is your other commitments. So you're currently the chief conductor of the BBC Philharmonic and the Turku Philharmonic Orchestra, which is in Finland.
Yeah.
As well as director of the Lapland Chamber Orchestra, where you mentioned Lapland earlier, which is where your family lives. So those are 3 other commitments. How will you be able to balance all of these commitments and still make NAC, the National Arts Center Orchestra, feel like your one true love?
That's a good question, and that's a good challenge. But also we have built on this, I think, in a possible and clever way. And also the fact is that now when I was asked and when decision was made to start in this role already now, the first thing I said was that, look, I'm committed to BBC Phil and to Turku at least to summer 2028, because that's the contracts I have. So there's no chance that I can start immediately with doing 10 to 12 weeks in Ottawa. It's not possible. But then we agreed that, okay, I still take this role now. And of course, then I'm fully committed to it. But in the beginning, it's not possible for me to do so many weeks. So my first season, I do 6 weeks. My next season, I do 8 weeks. Then I go up to 10 to 12 weeks. And also there is a question mark also for myself. What am I doing with these other things, 28? That's something that still to think about. And then talking about Lapland Chamber Orchestra, we just had a celebration concert, which was my 30th year celebration as artistic director with that orchestra. And it's more a kind of lifestyle thing for me. That has been such a big part of my whole life as a musician to be part of the development of that chamber orchestra. And I live there, my family life is there, and this chamber orchestra, it's a fully professional orchestra, but we have always been very flexible together with how to find the periods I do with them. And practically I don't do so many weeks with them. It's more about planning the whole season. I'm very much involved with the ideas of what is done there and what they are doing. And it's also, because it's a chamber orchestra, they also do lots of projects without conductor. So it's I have different roles, but they are all with different kinds of orchestras too. And with BBC Phil, even if I'm the chief conductor, BBC Phil is a kind of orchestra that makes recordings and tourings and all kinds of projects all the time with a lot of different people, not particularly focusing all the time of the work with the chief conductor. So it's not as many weeks as I will do in Ottawa. I will have a bigger role in Ottawa. And what comes to Turku again, this is related very much to the moment right now with getting a new hall there, which is going to be fantastic. And I have been promised to be very much a part of all this until we get into that new hall. And who knows, maybe I can extend a few years. But if I extend something with them, I will probably decrease the amount of weeks I do with them. But right now, it's a big part. So all this, as you say, how to balance it, I see it as possible. Mm-hmm. Because it's different kind of roles and situations and different kinds of orchestras.
All right. So I'm hoping that, I would like the listener to get a better sense of your personal taste and just who you are. So I have a rapid fire series of questions. Don't overthink it. Just give me the first thing that comes to your mind. All right. So the first is, if you, as I mentioned before we started talking, I went on tour with the NACO last year. It was incredible. So I'm curious if there's one city that you would take the orchestra on tour next, where would you go?
Do you mean internationally?
Internationally, yes.
Well, I would love to take the orchestra to the north, to Scandinavia, Finland, and certain places where also there are fantastic halls and audiences, like Iceland or Stavanger in Norway, places like this. That would be great.
Your favorite Sibelius composition that no one's ever heard of?
Night Ride and Sunrise.
That's an incredible composition. I've got that on vinyl. Your favorite Finnish conductor that no one's ever heard of, aside from Sibelius? I mean, everybody's heard of Sibelius.
Paavo Berglund. There are musicians who have heard of me. I know he visited Ottawa a few times. He was very important for me, and we had a good relation until he died some 10 years ago. And he was a great conductor. Very important for me yeah.
What is one pre-concert ritual that you can't do without? So something that you must do every time before you go on stage to prepare.
Well, there might be some that I won't tell you.
All right. Okay. All right.
But anyway, I say one thing. I don't want to be isolated before the concert. I want to keep my door open to the conductor's room. I want to see the musicians. I want to talk with the musicians. I want to look at the musicians in the eyes and before they go on stage. I want to have that connection with them already before. I don't want to be shut into my conductor's room and then they are ready and tuned and everything. Then I come in and no, I hate that. I want to be close to the whole thing all the time right before the concert.
What is one thing that you wish audiences would do more of during concerts?
I don't know. Maybe just relax and take open-mindedly whatever we present and look and see in the musicians how devoted they are, because that's what I hope for, that we are. That that's the essential thing, that for any audience, if they see that these musicians, they really believe in what they are doing and they do it 150% and giving them all, then that's great. So just enjoy and relax.
Okay. All right. I have one last question. I know I will let you go. I know we're a little over time here, and thank you again for your time, John.
That is fine.
For this next issue of Cannopy magazine, which you will be in, we're asking artists a simple question. Everybody that we interview, we ask them this question: are you in love? Because we're interested in, if you're recording an album or making a film, but in your case, you're always making music. There's rarely a rest period. What we believe is that in order to sustain this, every artist has their own way of falling in love with the next project or remaining in love so that they can create something that connects with people. The controversial opinion here that I have is that you cannot create anything, especially music, if you're not in love. It can be with a place, you're in love with a person, you're in love with some recording or a composer, that there needs to be a foundational love affair, so to speak, in order for you to create something. So my question is, number one, that's what I believe, but do you believe that love is necessary in order to create an artistic experience for other people? And if so, what are you in love with to be able to do this every single week?
Good. Yes, I agree with you. You have to love this. You have to love what you do. And to be honest, I enjoy my work as a musician right now more than ever. And I think that has to do with two things. Maybe most of all, because I'm not young anymore. I'm really experienced and I've done a lot and I know so much music and I have such a huge experience of repertoire and different kinds of working situations, also psychologically and everything. And also from many perspectives, from having been a concertmaster, a leader, soloist, conductor, all this together. So this experience is a huge thing, and I still have the energy. I mean, in that sense, I don't feel old at all, but I still have the energy. I'm full of energy and inspiration for doing what I do. So I really enjoy it more than ever, and that has to do with all what I said. Another thing which is very important for me is the connection to normal family life close to nature, which is very possible in Finland. And especially we have a fantastic summer place in the very south of Finland and at an island. And when I get there, even if I'm there only like 2-3 days, or when I can be there, then I be there for a longer time, then I'm really just in the middle of nature. And for a long time, we didn't have any electricity there. Now we have a sun panel, so we can use a little bit electricity for a few lamps and things, and for loading our phones if we are there. And alone or with family, whatever, if I'm there, I'm really loading my batteries, and I'm really enjoying just hearing the sounds of nature and the sea around me and the birds and everything. And that gives me so much strength for what my work is. Otherwise, going all around in big places and meeting hundreds of people all the time. And so that's I feel is a big part of why I am so full of energy and love for what I do.